We're actually going to take a look at two things here. We're going to take a look at expected values when there's two possible outcomes. Um, and this is more, if you guys take a look at your slide 10 and slide 12. So we're actually going to do one of the problems up here. This is slide 10, and down here we have slide 12. And this is doing expected values of possible outcomes. So if we take a look at slide 10 is giving a scenario. So let me just talk about the scenario here and then we'll kind of move forward. So the question is, how much money on average will an insurance company make off of a 1-year life insurance policy worth $50,000 if they charge $1,000 for the policy and each policyholder has a 99.99% chance of surviving the year? So I have this set up, and this is actually how you're going to set up expected values um, if we're looking at like a dollar value outcome, then you want to set them up this way. And what we have here is the actual event. So if you think about the two events for this scenario is that an individual will live or an individual will die. Pretty morbid, but this is the scenario we're working with. The next X is in this case, the way of looking at it is the amount of profit is the way of looking at this, the dollar value that's expected. P of X is the probability of that outcome. And then, of course, we have this is the outcome times the probability of that outcome. And what we're going to do is we're going to come up with an answer with the expected value. Okay. So the first thing is with this scenario X, when we talk about the amount of profit. So if the individual lives, now we're looking on the reverse end. Instead of the individual, we're looking at the insurance policy company. So we have here that on average of a 1-year life policy on 50,000, if they charge $1,000. So if the individual lives, the profit to the company is $1,000. And what I can do is I'll just so you have an idea, I will make this in maybe not. But then we have if the individual dies. So the way of thinking about this is once again profit to the company. So if the individual dies, the individual paid $1,000, but they have to pay out $50,000. So their outcome or their profits are actually a negative $49,000. Okay. Now, the next step is to find the probabilities attached to that, and we have here that the chance that someone lives in that year is a 0.9999. Anytime you want to do probabilities, now you can do the 0.00, like type it in, but what you can also do is actually make it a math function and do equals 1 minus that probability, which will give us the complement of 0.0, and that's not an error, it's just that if I were to I guess I could extend this out. So this just means 1 with 4 moved 4 decimal places. Okay. So in order to find expected value, the first step is multiplying the probability of an outcome times the profit from that outcome. So we would actually, once again, use math functions equals this times this. And we have $999.90. Down here, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to take my outcome, my profits times the probability of that occurrence, and hit enter. And to solve for expected values or means is just adding those two together. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this plus, and you can do the sum function, this, and I get 1 with 3 zeros after it. And I'm actually going to just fix these up. And we'll actually change it to currency. For some reason, I click on the currency, but I can do it here. So what we're looking at is, if you look at this, is that the expected value or the expected profit or the average profit per policy holder is $995. and I'll just put expected value is $995. So that's the process of solving for expected values of a discrete random variable. So you can, depending on the type of setup, this would be, once again, with two possible outcomes. And it doesn't have to be two possible, and there could actually be a third option there. Not for this scenario, obviously, someone's either going to live or die, but there's also some potential for third probability or third event, but this is a process. Now, this next question down here relates to slide 12, which is actually looking at two different things. It's looking at the potential profit of purchasing currencies or purchasing a bond. So what this is this is going to help in decision making. So let's say that we have these two possible decisions to either purchase currencies or bonds. So what we want to do is, the way we're going to make our decision is based off of the expected value or the expected profit for those two. So in currency, we have a profit and a loss, and with bonds, we have a profit and a loss. So the scenario says, I'll read the scenario here. So a bank can either risk $20,000 on currency investments that has a 51% chance of earning them $40,000 in profit, or they could take the risk of $700,000 on a bond investment that has a 98% chance of earning them $40,000. In the long run, which strategy will yield the most profit? Okay, so there's two ways of looking at this for currencies. So with currencies, we have ourselves a profit or a loss. So if you think about a currency investment, and then there's a profit of $40,000. So if the takes a risk on currency, the possible profit on this is going to be $40,000, right? So they risked 20, but it has a profit of 40,000. So with some of these, kind of like if you think about here, you know, here it said that it didn't give us the amount of the profit for this one. It said that they would pay out 50,000, but then there would have been $1,000 spent. So if the person dies, the person paid $1,000, but the company paid out 50, which means they'd have a net loss of 49,000. So here it was kind of, you had to solve for it. In this one here, you know, we kind of have the idea. They told us what the profit is going to be if they spend $20,000. So if they spend $20,000, their profit's going to be 40. So we don't have to subtract or make any adjustments here. So the possible profit is $40,000. Now the loss, if the individual, the bank, takes the risk and that risk actually falls through, then they're going to lose that $20,000 of investment. So they would actually have a negative $20,000 in investment. So we have a profit and a loss. Okay. Now the probabilities attached to that, we said that the probability that they would actually succeed is a 51% chance. So in probability terms, you know, we can put 0.51. Now here, once again, just using a math function, I'm going to do equals 1 minus this, which is going to be 49% chance, but here we have 0.49 probability. And then finally, we want to know, we're going to take the possible outcome times the probability of that outcome, and we're going to actually do this for both. So what we're doing is we're solving for the expected value. So in this case, the expected value, and once again, as I said before, you can actually use the sum as well. And we have the expected profit of these two outcomes is $10,600. For the bond, we have here, if they can risk $700,000 on the bond investment that has a 98% chance of earning them $40,000 in the long run. Which strategy will yield the most profit? So the company can spend $700,000, and the probability of that occurring is 98%, but the profit attached to that is $40,000. Now, if this falls through, if the bond tanks, they will actually lose their investment of 700,000. So we'll actually put a negative 700,000. So once again, I'm going to change these to currencies. The probabilities, we said a 98% chance of earning them, so we'll do 0.98, and then down here we'll do equals 1 minus that 0.98. We have a 0.2 chance. So the expected value of this is taking, once again, the outcome times the probability of that outcome. And then the expected value is the sum of those. And that was, again, expected value. Bounce that up. So if we look at these two options between currencies and bonds, the expected value, if we would take the risk on currencies, or if the bank would take a risk on currencies, their expected profit would be $10,600. With the bond, by going through the same process and finding out that their expected value is $25,200, then we have the smart choice, or the wise choice would be to purchase the bond simply by basing it off of the expected values that we would have, or the average amount of profit. Okay, so whatever one's greater is the one we want to take there. There is, I think, a couple more practices. Also, make sure you're doing the practice problems that, and you can use these as kind of your basis or your guideline. You guys have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. Thanks.